experience, UP has the upper hand over Ateneo. But just from a talent perspective, can you make the case Ateneo is matching UP in terms of roster construction? Welcome back to another episode of the Navs Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Naveen Ganglani. First of all, I should apologize. I know that on our Monday episode, I said that we would produce and post something by Wednesday. Unfortunately, that did not happen. That was the same day as my flight back to Manila. And when I got back, to be honest, I was just really tired and exhausted, and I chose to rest and chill. But we're back. It's Friday, July 18. We're recording this the same day that we're posting it. On Spotify, it's going to be posted as one part. On YouTube and Facebook, two separate parts. So, just something to note. I found two guys that I thought would provide really good context into what we want to discuss here today because I think they're quite important topics. One for on court basketball action, and two for larger implications in the college basketball scene. So, first, we have Miles Devesa, who has joined us. He is one of the members of the newly formed UPtakes Podcast. They talk about University of the Philippines athletics and sports on their YouTube channel. So you guys search their podcast when you're done with this, especially if you're a fan from UP. And also we have Karl joining us now. Karl has been a long time basketball writer. He used to write for IB Times. He also used to contribute to Dugout Philippines, and also he used to contribute to Humble Ball. One of the reasons why I brought these two guys in is because Miles is from UP and Karl is from Ateneo. And the first question I want to ask is, given what we've seen in the offseason so far, gentlemen, this might be a year where we see the on-court rivalry of Ateneo and UP in UAAP basketball be competitive and entertaining once again. Now, maybe, of course, the future is unknown. We're uncertain until we get to the actual action on the court. Before I give the floor to Karl and Miles, let's just do a quick recap from the start of the Battle of Katipunan rivalry up to where we are now. So, it really started in 2018. That was the year that UP made the finals for the first time since 1986. They were swept by Ateneo in the finals. Ateneo also beat them two times in the elimination round. So in 2018, Ateneo went 4-0 against UP, which is honestly nothing to be ashamed of if you're UP. Ateneo is kicking everyone's ass during this era of UAP basketball. I see Karl laughing, reminiscing on the old times. That ironically was one of the games as well where Thirdy and Paul Desiderio had the sequence, and Thirdy ended up getting suspended, which, if I recall correctly, was one of the weird moments. There was an unsportsmanlike foul in that second round game at Moa Arena. That was also the game where one GDL got a fever in the middle of the game and couldn't play, and this was in the middle of when he was going on his run. Then in 2019, 2-0, Ateneo beats UP in the elimination round again. One of those games in Araneta, the first rematch from the finals, was when Bo Perasol entered the court and looked like he turned into the Incredible Hulk. Much love to director Bo Perasol now. One of the nicest, chillest guys off the court you'll find. And then in 2022, after the pandemic, Ateneo beats UP in the first day of college basketball in the UAAP back since the pandemic. That was also the debut of UP under Coach Golden Monteverde. And then to end the elimination round, UP ends Ateneo's, that was their 3-year winning streak, somewhere along those lines, where they hadn't lost for so long. And UP shocked everyone by preventing a sweep of the Ilims of Ateneo and proving that someone could actually beat the invincible Blue Eagles once again. And then, of course, both teams end up meeting in the finals. We know how that went. To me, that's still the most competitive and legendary UAAP basketball finals we've ever seen. Three absolutely grueling games, and Karl can remind you guys how that ended if he wants to later on. And then in season 85, UP won that first game of the elimination round. I remember Forsky Padragao, who was still a Blue Eagle at that time, although not a popular one, we should say, hit a big 3-point shot to send the game to overtime. UP ends up getting the big win in OT. And then in the second round, Ateneo wins. That win helped Ateneo secure the number one seed, so they became the first ever underdog one seed in UAP finals history. That was also a game where I believe Henry Galinato and Dave Ildefonso had a little bit of a skirmish, not exactly physical, but some back and forth. Reciting all of this top of my head, by the way. So if I forgot something, I'm so sorry, guys. And then in the finals, UP wins game one at MOA. Game two, the infamous game where Xavier Lucero ends up tearing his ACL. Game three, Ateneo starts off a house on fire. Gab Gomez knocks down three pointers. I think it was in the first quarter. And really, the Blue Eagles ran away with the championship from there. Season 86, 2023. First rematch, Ateneo actually won that game. People forgot that Ateneo played very well in that first game in season 86. And they ended up closing the game with Mason Amos hitting clutch shots over Francis Lopez, a big pull up shot in mid range, and then a big step back 3 pointer in OT. I remember, and the Ateneo fans went crazy, both on social media and in the arena after those moments. And then a week later, both teams face each other again. UP wins at Araneta. And then in the final four, UP ends up eliminating Ateneo, getting payback for the year before. Then we go to season 87. It's not really much of a competition. Ateneo blows, or rather, UP blows Ateneo out both times in the opening day of the season, and then again in their second round matchup, which, if I recall, was the largest deficit a Tab Baldwin team had ever been defeated in a UAAP game. I'll have to double check that to be sure, but it was quite the blowout. So we're now here, UAAP season 88, 25. We know UP is still expected to be a title contender, and they reinforced that thought after their big win against LaSalle last weekend in the Phil Oil tournament. And Ateneo, based from what we've seen at Asia Basket, they're competitive once again. They also gave LaSalle a challenge. And I feel like people are sleeping on them as a dark horse championship contender. I think they're a Final Four team. They're talented, they're loaded, they've restocked. Coach Tab is still a formidable coach. And of course, we know how formidable UP still is. So, all of that to say, is this a year, a season where we see Ateneo and UP go head to head in competitive fashion once again? So I'm gonna start with you, Carl. I'm sure you've been keeping up with the Blue Eagles moves. I'm sure you've been keeping up with their off-season games, Carl, particularly their two impressive tune-up performances against Strong Group before Strong Group went to Taiwan. If you guys want to know more about that, I did an episode with Nico Rocha detailing it a few episodes ago. So, do you think Ateneo has the chance to be competitive against UP once again, Carl?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's been a hard year for Ateneo fans. We finished at the bottom of the UAAP for the first time in how many years? I think for the very first time in its history. So looking forward to season 88, I am confident that this will be the season that Ateneo is back to relevance because as difficult as it has been since we've lost especially Christian Porter, since losing Christian Porter, it was a massive blow. But it would be nice to remember that we have names like Divine Adili, Kaimani Ladi bringing back or coming into the fold to cover for what would have been his loss. So if we're looking into how Ateneo performed during Asia Basket, the future is bright. They finished second in that tournament, as Naveen mentioned. They gave LaSalle a run for its money. It was a good fight, but at the same time, it was a more veteran DLSU squad that they came up against. So this season, entering season 88, I am confident that Ateneo will be not the monster that it once was, but I do think it will be a very competitive season for the Blue Eagles.
Well, Carl, I think one aspect that Ateneo is probably optimistic about right now is it knows what its rotation for the most part is going to be. And I get that that might be a little too early to say considering they had two one and dones in Escobar and Lazo, who are also guests on this podcast a few weeks ago. You guys check that out. So how do you add those guys to the roster, particularly when you already had a pretty deep team that you showcase in Asia Basket? But these two guys are one and done prospects. They're college basketball veterans, not Philippine basketball veterans. There's a difference, but college basketball veterans. And what we've heard so far is that these two guys have been impressive. So I imagine an Ateneo closing lineup of Adili, Ladi, Jared Bahay, Tuano, and Escobar and or Gamber, depending on who's performing well. You could even be versatile enough where maybe you play Ladi at the five and you go five out. And we know Ateneo has a very analytical, advanced way of planning their game plan and their sets and whatnot. So there's some adjustments you can make there, but you imagine Lodi will definitely be there, Tuano probably there, one of Bahay or Espinosa will be handling the point position. If Adili's not in foul trouble, you insert him there. And then, like I said, Escobar or Gamber, whoever has the hot hand. Miles, compared to UP, I'm not quite sure UP knows or has a set
Right.
closing lineup yet. Am I
Right.
right to assume that? I mean, you imagine Remogat will be there, but we've also seen Remogat struggle with his shots sometimes. You imagine Alarcon will be there, probably Abadiano, Noruka. But does UP have a set closing five similar to how Ateneo might?
That's a very good observation, Navs. As a matter of fact, even in our podcast, we've discussed this before that really even at this point, UP still has a lot of experimentation going on. Coach Gold is experimenting again. But as we've seen before, this is I think his fifth going to be his fifth season with the team. So this is something we've seen before, not really something to panic about. Of course, it's a concern, but on the flip side, the good thing about it is that um, compared at least to other teams, no, except probably Ateneo, who hasn't really UP hasn't played yet in the off season. Um, there's still a lot to unscouted about UP. No, this UP team is still far from the final product. Shall we say? Even though the people are familiar, most of the championship core from last season will be back. But the rotations will definitely be very different, especially because big pieces such as QMB, JD Kagulangan, Francis Lopez are gone. So a lot of minutes up for grabs. The minutes are in flux. It's I think right now there's still a lot of ceiling for UP, if only because they're still tinkering with the lineup. So there's still a lot of changes to be had. Although one thing's for sure, I think that perhaps the best closers for UP are Abadiano and Alarcon. So definitely either or both of them would be there in the end game. But as for everyone else, it's all up for grabs. I think even up to this point, at least.
I might even add Torres there, given that he can be a defensive player and he's improved some of his offensive game. Like I mentioned in the last episode, he's been working with True Focus under the leadership of Jolo Tamayo, so that's something to watch out for. Quick note on UP2. Does it feel sometimes like during late game situations, the former Bullpops tend to maybe take control way too much rather than trust their teammates? Or is that something that they've earned given their long tenure under Coach Gold?
I think it's something that they've earned really. They right now they've had the longest residency, in the team. They're the fifth year guys on this team, and they've essentially been with the team for especially Abadiano, no. He's been with the team since 2020. So they've been in the team for a long time. Aside from not just their seniority, no. So it isn't just a seniority thing. They've shown in the past that they can be clutch, no. For example, Abadiano, in if you remember the season 86 game, second round game where UP got revenge, no, for the first round game where Amos exploded against UP. It was Abadiano who was really
Yep.
clutch in that game.
Even the Final
He
Four.
exploded,
Yeah, that
and
big play
especially in the final
against
four
Chris
game as
Kuhn.
well.
Yeah, I
That's
remember.
true. That's true. And then for Torres, as you mentioned, no, not even going into the way he defended KQ in that game three last year, no, even just the as recent as the game against LaSalle in Phil Oil, no, in the Phil Oil semifinals, it was Torres who really helped along with Gani Stevens bring UP back into the game. It was his mid-range shots and that pull-up three, no, that brought UP close to TLSU, which allowed Remoga to eventually put UP over the hump in that game. So I think the NU Bullpups, the former Bullpups earned it. It helps that they're familiar with the system, but the team will really be looking to them for leadership, especially this season.
So I'm gonna list down players on both teams. Okay, top of my head again. Ateneo, Adili, Ladi, Tuano, Bahay, Espinosa, Lazaro, Bongo, Escobar, Gamber. Am I missing anyone? I feel like I'm obviously missing a few guys, but Waki Espina to some degree if you want to add them there. UP naman, Abadiano, Alarcon, Torres, Felicilda, Gianni Stevens, Noruka, Remogat, Jacob Bela. Um, I know I'm missing a few more here, but I'm blanking out. Briones, Iniguez, Gagate. So top of my mind. Apologies to those we forgot. But Carl, as I list down the names of each team, just from a talent perspective, because we know from a continuity perspective, experience, UP has the upper hand over Ateneo. But just from a talent perspective, can you make the case Ateneo is matching UP in terms of roster construction?
Well, when you put it in that way, I would say yes, talent is there to combat, at least combat how UP's. I think the biggest problem with Ateneo the past few seasons was there has been a lack of identity, I would say. Like they know they're talented, but when they start taking to the court, it's like they're losing themselves in a way. So when you have the talent of, for example, Sean Tuano, who's starting to emerge, I would say I was very hard on Tuano last season because I thought he was talented enough, but he lacked the polish that a player of Tab Baldwin's caliber would want to be in his starting five, or at the very least in his core rotation. The same goes for Kyle Gambert. Very talented kid, has a lack of polish. So now with the addition of guys like Divine Adili, even to a certain degree, Lars Fielvang, I don't know if he's playing this season or if he's gonna be in the roster. It's a talented team from top to bottom. I would say a bit more or at least equally talented as last season. But when you look at UP and with how their core has been, it's the same for the past 5 years, especially when you have those glue guys. We fail to point out how important glue guys are, especially in collegiate basketball. Ateneo has not had that in a very long time, or at least in the past 2 seasons or three, even. So I think the talent is there. It will compete with UP, but to what degree, we're not yet sure of because we know UP is complete. They just lost QMB and JD Kagulangan, if I remember correctly.
Francis
Lopez.
Lopez.
Francis Lopez
Their
as well.
three
Aldous.
best players from last season. Aldous Torculas, yeah, one more.
So the core is still there. They just missed their top heavy guys, but I would like to believe that in the form of Ray Remogat, those guys are going to step up. So I'm really interested in seeing how it plays out for both sides, especially.
But if I'm Ateneo right now, and maybe I'm leaning too much into the past history of success of Coach Tab, which this might be his final round two, his final dance, shall we say. But if I'm Ateneo right now, I'm thinking, okay, talent perspective, we can match this team. Shooting perspective, we can match this team. We have some knockdown shooters on our roster as well. Length, maybe not so much size, but length I think is there. Athleticism, I feel it's there as well. If I'm Ateneo, I'm probably right to think, yeah, UP comes in as a slightly more experienced team, but we can beat these guys. And not just yeah, we should have the mindset we can beat anyone, that everyone says. The mindset of we can run with these guys. We can beat these guys. We haven't played them yet, but we almost beat LaSalle and we've beaten the other teams. We're competitive with the other teams. Why not them too?
They're inexperienced. I will give them that, especially they're young. It's a completely new team. Since you lost key veterans, you lost Porter, you've lost your co-captains and Sean Kitevis and Chris Kuhn. Those are very, very important people. And I think just because they quote unquote failed to perform to expectations last season, everyone's counting Ateneo out. And I would understand why, because there was a time when I felt the same way. But entering Asia Basket and after the tournament concluded and seeing how Ateneo performed, the talent really is there. They can compete. Yun nga, the problem is how they will tie it together. Like, you can be as talented as you are, you can be as great as you are, you can have all of the characteristics in the world. But if you don't mesh together as a team and you don't find that groove or that momentum, that's all for naught because you're wasting your talents. So the most important thing for Ateneo heading into the season is the team chemistry. That's what I'm most concerned about, especially.
It doesn't help too sometimes that you don't get the early tape that you get to watch against these UAAP teams. Now, it could be an advantage that people don't exactly get to scout Ateneo this early and what they're capable of because a lot of their matches have been closed door or tune up so far, particularly since the arrival of Escobar and Lazo. But I think the key here really is Ladi. I feel like this guy has mythical 5 potential. He's the type of guy I feel that look, we need a bucket, get it to him. He's so long, he's so tall, he's a good shooter that it's almost like if you need a shot, give him the ball and he'll probably get you the best chance to put points on the board because of the combination of the qualities I just said. The key here, in my opinion, is Tuano, like you mentioned, because he's the best slasher on the team. If he can get into the paint, make his free throws, kick it out to open shooters, that opens things up. I feel like everyone will assume that it has to be Jared Bahay who takes the next step because he is the hype recruit, right? He is the guy from Ateneo de Cebu. He is supposed to be the next in line of Ateneo great point guards. But for Ateneo to be super successful, and by super successful, I mean contending for a championship, I feel Jared has to be more of a court general and playmaker rather than the guy you give the ball to put the ball in the hole.
Definitely. And that's one of the key points, or I think one of the key issues that I would like to think Ateneo has addressed this offseason because especially looking at how Jared Bahe and then Ian Espinosa closed out the games last season, there were times when Ian looked the more polished point guard while Bahay was still finding his footing. And that's understandable. He was a rookie. But based on the hype that Jared Bahay was getting last season, a lot of expectations were placed on him. And most of the time, especially I think it was the second round game versus UST, wherein Ateneo just trusted more in Ian Espinosa's point guard abilities over Bahay's shot making and his offense. So entering season 88, Jared Bahay has to find ways to get everyone else around him involved because Ian has been doing it very, very well for the past 2 seasons. And he beat out Bahay, I would say, I think around 30% of the time last season, around 40% of the time. So Jared Bahay's playmaking is there. It's more of doing the hockey assists, as I would say, like the setup to the setup of the play. So that will be his point of improvement heading into season 88.
Bahay to me just needs to do a great job taking care of the basketball, avoiding the turnovers. And if he can improve the 3-point shooting, I think it was like 20 something percent last season to somewhere closer to 32, 33%. That incremental change might be enough to change the outlook of Ateneo. Miles, we know that when you ask teams, their common response is, we're prepared for everybody. We're taking every opponent the same way. We're preparing for them the same way. We consider them all dangerous. The stuff that they're supposed to say. But deep in their hearts, we know that the elite teams are aware who is going to be standing in their way at the end of the season. For the last 2 years, La Salle and UP have known that it's gonna be the other team that they would have to defeat to go to the championship, right? And the results prove that they faced each other in the finals the last 2 seasons. It went the distance. They faced each other in the Phil Oil playoffs the last 3 seasons when you consider this year actually, and it ended up being very competitive games. But if you're UP, Miles, and to some degree if you're LaSalle, how concerned should you be of Ateneo breaking into that scale and crashing the party from 1 to 5? How concerning should they be?
Well, if I have to rate it from 1 to 5, it should probably be a 4, I guess, because right now the understanding is that of course, at least from UP point of view, no, definitely LaSalle is there, UST is up there, NU is close there, so that's about 4 teams already. And then if you add another team to the mix, which is actually likely Ateneo based on their performance in Asia Basket, though, that will definitely be a cause for concern, especially when you take the rankings in the final four into consideration, who you're going to match up with. Because as we all know, as we've seen many times in the past, even the 4 seed or the 3 seed can upset the top seeds. No, a twice to beat advantage is not really a guarantee that you'll make it to the finals. And as a matter of fact, I don't think compared to the previous seasons that there's a chance that the top 2 teams are guaranteed at this point. No, although UP and LaSalle are on paper because of their experience and talent are generally considered to be the top contenders. I don't think that in a similar way as in last season that they are really clear cut the top 2. No, I think they're closer. In terms of tiers to the rest of the competition, so it's really a concern. That's why I would rank it as a 4, especially for UP, who hasn't seen the Ateneo Blue Eagles in action yet this offseason. We've heard some very good things about Ateneo's scrimmages, as you said, against SGA, no, and even in Asia Basket, and we haven't. They were able to put up a fight against the DLSU Green Archers, who already had most of their what would be their lineup for this coming season in that game. Whereas Ateneo didn't have Escobar, no Lazo. Also, I don't think they had the Ateneo de Cebu recruits, no, sina Fialvang and Rota also in that game as well, no. So Ateneo with just Ladi and Adili was able to put up a fight against the Green Archers and without those prize recruits yet. So I think it's really going to be an interesting match. I think on paper Ateneo has what it takes. But I agree with what Karl said. It will likely boil down to the chemistry that they will be able to build coming into this season.
Last 4 seed to win the championship in the UAAP was the NU Bulldogs in 2014 when they ended the 60-year championship dry spell. The year before that, ironically, UST in 2013 made the finals as the 4 seed as well. They upset NU as the 1 seed in the final four, and they were up 15 in game 3 of the finals against DLSU until Jeron Teng led that comeback. Just giving you guys some UAP history in case you forgot. The key to Ateneo winning for me is Adili. Now, I mentioned Ladi, and I think that goes without saying, but another main key is Adili. Because if he can stay out of foul trouble, it changes everything for Ateneo. If you go back to those LaSalle Ateneo games in Asia Basket, and we keep referencing these games because those were the main games that showed the potential Ateneo had. When Adili was on the court, Ateneo was very competitive. He was rebounding the ball, scoring in the paint. He knows how to carve space out for himself using his body, his heft. And considering this guy is straight out of high school, and if Ateneo is lucky, they're going to have 5 seasons of him, is something to be excited about if you're a Blue Eagles fan. But we should also mention he has issues staying on the court because of foul trouble. Now, when you go up against Mike Phillips, there's a big chance you're gonna get into foul trouble because that is Michael Phillips. The problem is, based on roster construction and what Ateneo has added or not added since then, is when Adili is off the court, they do not have another reliable big man at that 5 position. That's why I mentioned playing Ladi at the 5 and going 5 out. So just going back to the UP Ateneo matchup, UP might not have a lot of talent at the big man position like they did last season with QMB there or Malik, but Noruka has proven to be a valuable offensive weapon for UP. Gianni Stevens is starting to really come along well the last few games. I was very impressed by how he played against DLSU, and I was also impressed by Sean Alter. You're seeing the development there. So, Carl, am I right to assume that if Ateneo has one weakness in this matchup against UP, or the main weakness, it would be that big man position, and suddenly you're relying a lot on Adili to stay on the court?
Sure, definitely. Like it's not even a a question at this point. Losing Porter was a very, very big blow to the Ateneo front court because he was the big boy in the middle for Ateneo last season. He was the guy that you would expect to fight for the boards, be it a bad rebound or a bad shot by his teammates. You can expect him to be under the basket. Now, without him backing up or even working alongside Divine Adili in the front court, now it becomes a question of who will take over that position or at least be a substitute or a backup for Divine. So that's where I think Lars Fielvang is a interesting fit in the front court for Ateneo. He's physical, can bang inside the paint, very, very big guy, but he's still young. He's still raw.
He
He
also
has
looks
yet
like
to
he can
catch
be
up.
an NSYNC, right?
Definitely has the looks for it too. So he has the UAP looks ready for him. So
Shout out to Lars. That's a good guy right there. Go on.
but yeah, like it's a problem for Ateneo when facing UP because UP knows how to maximize its length. And that has been a troublemaker for a lot of teams in the UAP in the past 4 seasons for the UP Fighting Maroons. So when it comes to Ateneo, finding a way to solve that becomes a very, very big question mark for Coach Tab Baldwin and the rest of the Ateneo coaching staff to figure out because you can't rely on just one guy or two guys. It has to be a committee, especially when you're facing the UP front court. That's gonna be a losing bet most of the time. But there can be a way to solve around it. Like there has to be a way for them to work around it if they want to be competitive this year.
The Espinosa factor against Remogat is something I'm gonna be watching out for because Espinosa is quite the pest on the defensive end. He will get in your body, he will pull out all the tricks, he will scratch and claw until he gets the ball out of your hands. The good news for Remogat in this matchup is I don't think Ateneo has the manpower to do what LaSalle was doing, which made Ray struggle before those two dagger shots, which is having Mike Phillips come out on the pick and roll and trap or hedge or hard show and force him to give up the ball near half court, right? Which teams can really do that? We'll see if Akowe can do that. I'm not sure he can do that right away. I think low-key Mo Konate of FEU is going to be able to do that. Watch out for Konate. I think he's going to be the best FSA this season. Precious to some degree, but you can find the holes in UE to attack on defense. LaSalle is LaSalle. Can Ateneo do that? Can Divine Adili do that? Because if you're watching how teams defend pick and roll situations now in college basketball, you need that versatile big man who can get out there, which makes me wonder if we're gonna see a lot of lineups with Lodi at the five because he's versatile enough to do that. I'm not saying he's the Mike Phillips level to do that, but he's versatile enough to do that. So from an X and O's perspective, you guys watch out for that. I want to see what happens when the first time these two teams face each other. Before we move on to the next topic, Miles, real quick. The UP community has dealt with both the last few years. Who's more annoying for the UP community? The Ateneo fans or the LaSalle fans? And I want you to give me
Okay.
an answer.
Well, I think you're gonna hate me for this, but I think I'm going to say it's a tie.
No,
Especially
no,
after
no, no, no. I'm not accepting
so I
ties
have to
right now.
pick a
Come
side.
on.
Okay, so
You
do I have
have
to
to,
pick a
yes.
side? Okay, fine. I think I have to say it's LaSalle.
Okay,
Look,
okay,
Karl
explain.
is laughing over there. He's smiling.
Hey,
So
Karl's
that's
had experience with the
one thing
LaSalle
one thing we have to
fans.
agree on.
Hey, by the way, I don't blame you. LaSalle fans can be, and I'm saying this from someone who came from LaSalle, we can be irritating sometimes. In a good way for LaSalle fans, but in an annoying way for the opponents. But go on, Miles.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's probably just because of the little things you have on court side. Having watched a lot of games live since season 84, seeing both Battle of Katipunan and then the New Age rivalry with LaSalle, I think I've seen more courtside incidents, I would say, against LaSalle, like fans shouting at each other, even without the context of a match. Because in a match, it's normal when the fans are shouting at each other. But even like before a game starts or in the escalator, you see fans jeering each other. There's not a lot of that in Ateneo UP matches, but in UP LaSalle matches, I think I've seen a lot of that. So I think that's the basis for my answer. Just a lot of bardagulan, essentially, outside of the context of a shouting match in a game.
The funniest part was when the LaSalle UP finals, now again, people are gonna give me shit for saying it's a rivalry. I don't care, it's a rivalry. When you, like
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
said
it
just
really
now,
is.
Miles, and the action in the court, that's a rivalry. If that's not a rivalry, I don't know what is in terms of on-court competition. But when this UP LaSalle lore, as the kids nowadays say it, started, Carl, I'm gonna throw the question back to you. You've also seen both sides of the coin, LaSalle and UP, as Ateneo has had rivalries with both these schools. How do you differentiate the two, and who is more annoying to deal with for you, Carl?
Oh no, that's the question I've been fearing all my life, especially since I've been focusing on the UAAP for the past 5, 6 years of my life in my career. So, if I'm being honest, it has to be Miles. I'm sorry, it's really UP.
I understand. I think I have an idea why, but let's hear from you.
Like you're our Katipunan neighbors. You're just over there in Diliman. We love you guys. From a fan's perspective, we really enjoy it. Like it's been super fun. UPTC, UP Town in Katipunan has been very, very active in terms of the rivalry between Ateneo and UP. But when it comes to the court, it's the same thing. Like with a lot of people when they say they hate facing UST, it's the go Uste chant. It's the UP's chant. UP's
By the
chanting.
way,
It's
sorry,
really
that's low
annoying.
key a community that's hard to play against. Also,
I
UST.
know. Exactly. And that's what's annoying about UP because you can be down 10, you can be down 15, you can be down 20, hell, you can be up by 30, which you guys did to us in the second round of last year. It's still going. It's really, really loud. Nakakapagod siya. It's really draining for Ateneo fans to hear the UP chant. It's I love it, but it's also super annoying. But it comes from a place of damn, these guys are not letting up. We have to put them down by at least 50 to at least ensure a victory. But that's
And
where
you're
I have
and
my
you're not
complete
gonna lead
respect.
by 50 against them.
It's never gonna happen against UP. Yeah, the UP fan base has my complete respect, and it's been fun cheering against them and cheering with them throughout the dark ages, quote unquote. But now that UP has been super, super competitive, it's really annoying. More annoying than LaSalle because LaSalle, we hate them on very spiritual levels, sometimes very terrifying levels. With UP, it's a competition of you're our neighbor, so we have to hate you.
There wasn't a lot of bad blood in 81 and 84, to be honest. Like 81, for from a UP point of view, we really weren't expecting to win kasi
It was
that
very
was the
big
time when
brother, little brother, diba?
yeah, that was the
Yes.
time when Third Year Ravenna was a beast. He was dominating everyone. So everyone was expecting UP to lose. We really just wanted. Well, first we were just happy to be there, and then we really just wanted to put up a decent fight, and then that's it. I think that was the expectation from the community. But for 84, I think there was another, I would say, non-sport, probably source of camaraderie between the two teams. And then it quickly escalated into a really annoying rivalry, probably by 85, I think.
I love it though. I really do. Sometimes I get caught in the crossfire between all communities, and not just these three, all communities, honestly. But I love the back and forth. I love it as long as it doesn't get personal or physical, of course. But it's part of the UAAP culture, it's part of the basketball culture. And I think at the end of the day, there's mutual respect amongst all communities. Ateneo LaSalle, look, they've gone at it for years and years and years, and they will go at it until the end of time. But deep down, there's a deep rooted respect there for each other. And no matter what the people from each community says about UP, UP is starting to earn deep rooted respect as well. I'm not gonna say that means for everyone in each community because there are always going to be outliers there. But from a competitive standpoint and a fair standpoint on the court, I think that That's pretty much accurate. Okay, we'll now move on to our next